Hey guys, welcome back to Morgan Hill Farms. So a couple of Fridays ago, I was in bed tossing and turning early morning. Nate was just getting up to leave for work and I could not sleep. And the thing that was keeping me awake was that I knew that I had to start my fall garden. These are the things in my mind. In fact, last night I tossed and turned because I kept having dreams that I had too many tomatoes and cucumbers and that I wasn't preserving them and they were going bad. So yeah, it's kind of a crazy garden year, crazy mind, crazy everything right now. But anyways, so I ended up getting up that Friday morning. Nate was getting ready for work. The kids were still sleeping. And I thought, I'm going to start all of my seeds and get that off of my plate for the day. So I already had about 300 soil blocks ready for me. And I had already figured out what I was going to plant. So cabbages, storage cabbages, Napa cabbage, broccoli, spinach, all kinds of stuff. So I knew what I was going to plant. And so I sat down in my dining room and started to get my seed packets out and everything ready. So I thought I would put on a YouTube video since the house was really quiet and I was just kind of enjoying a little bit of quiet time there. So I went to YouTube, and as I'm scrolling through my feed, everything on there was like breaking news, urgent, global IT outage, healthcare, banks, 911 systems, airlines grounded, global outage. And so I was like, man, what in the world is happening? So I clicked on one of the videos and it started to go on talking about how all flights essentially globally had been grounded because of this IT update that had gone out and had messed up the computers. The news stations were saying, we were able to get around it so that we can broadcast, but this is what's going on and that and everything else. And I thought, here it is. It's the end of the world. It's finally here. And I want to say, you know what? I was at peace. I was at peace just knowing that I was sitting there starting my fall garden, preparing to bring in more food over the next few months. My kids were safe in their beds. My husband, he was getting ready in the other room. I asked him, I said, hey, did you hear about this? He says, yeah, I just got an update. I don't know if my office is online or not. Luckily they were, so he was able to get his work done that day. But yeah, it was crazy. Some of the news reports that I was listening to were talking about people that were getting really angry at the airport personnel because they couldn't do anything. They couldn't print their passes. They couldn't check their baggage. They couldn't even update any of the travel screens. So, they couldn't say whether it was delayed, canceled, on time, nothing. And they had no answers for these people. And so with just in an hour or 2 hours worth of time, people were starting to get pretty upset. There was another guy that said that, that he went to the ATM and he couldn't figure out why he couldn't get cash out of the ATM, why nothing was working, and he said that someone yelled over to him that said, hey, the banks are down. And he thought, oh, okay, thanks, the banks are down. And then he thought, well, wait, what? The banks are down? Like, I can't get my money out? So there's this sense of panic and what's going on. But what I actually found was interesting was that at the airport, they started to interview some people. And you had a lot of these people, like some of them were going to LA, some of them were going to Chicago, some of them were going to New York City. And, they were going to visit a friend or maybe for a wedding or maybe they were traveling back home. But none of them were concerned about the fact that they were going to this hugely populated area in a time when you're not really certain what's going to happen. Like, nobody's thinking ahead. Nobody has the train of thought, at least that I do. And maybe some of you guys do too. But I would, maybe be rethinking my travel plans at that point. Maybe I'm wanting to go to the middle of Arkansas or the middle of the Ozarks or the middle of, nowhere to make sure that I'm sort of out of the way and not in the chaos of what might happen. Now, luckily, everything did get resolved. I do think that there's still probably some problems that they're still trying to resolve. And of course, CrowdStrike, that IT company, they are of course probably facing a lot of lawsuits. I did watch the CEO and he was, oh man, he looked like he was just about to have a heart attack. Now I don't know if I don't know if this is a conspiracy or if this just really happened, but when you're the CEO of an IT company that is as large as this, that is controlling major corporations and airlines, banks, healthcare, 911 systems, you would think that you would have prepped this, that you would have tested this and made sure that this update was not going to happen. But that's kind of beside the point. But it really kind of got me thinking about, how dependent are we on everything? Like, think about if you were at the airport and you were stranded. So my first thought is, with them not having any idea of what's going on, I would say, well, gosh, let's go get a hotel room, because who wants to hang out here at the airport? So you go to the hotel, but they can't even give you a room because they have no computers and they can't tell you what room has been booked and what hasn't. And if they can give you a room, you can't even get into the room because the key that they give you is a digitalized card, that they have to program so that you can access the door. So think about it, when we were kids, or when our parents were kids, you had a metal key. A metal key went into that lock and opened that door. There's no amount of control or no amount of any type of computer control or anything like that that could stop that metal key from working in that door. I mean, we are so dependent upon the internet, these systems. I mean, think of how much you see people on their phones. They could be sending emails, they could be working, they could be looking up really useful stuff, they could be using it for school. Maybe they're just using it for entertainment, which is what I see a lot of. A lot of kids have it for games and things like that. But how just pacified we are using our phones, and when those things aren't available, when we can't check the weather, when we can't look up a recipe. You know what I mean? I'm guilty of that. At dinner time, I'm like, okay, I've got pork and potatoes and summer squash. What can I do with that? You put that into your phone and it comes up with recipes for you. And it's just like, man, we really have to decrease our dependence. I'm not saying that these systems are going away, because I don't think that they will in case something really, really big happens. But I wanted to talk to you guys about a few ways that I thought would be good to kind of limit your reliance on the internet and on these types of systems. So the first one is to have cash on hand. If for some reason you had to go out during some type of a crisis or something like that, and you needed to get water or milk or bread, if the Visa and debit card systems are down, maybe Walmart can't help you, but maybe a local grocer or a local person who sells these things in like a small capacity, they may be able to take your cash. We still actually have a couple of companies around here that will work solely on cash, and they just have, the manual cash registers where there's no computer or internet needed. So cash would be a really good thing to have on hand. Another good thing to have on hand would be supplies, so that you don't have to run and go out. When I saw those news reports Friday morning, like I said, I was at peace. I knew I didn't need water. I knew we didn't need food. I knew we didn't need batteries, flashlight, fuel. I knew that we had all of these things ready, medical supplies, so that I don't have to go fight either, trying to get the last item off the shelf, or people who are in a panic. That's the last thing you want to be doing is going out, especially if you've got little kids and you've got to bring them with you. You don't want to be out in that situation. You'd rather be home and where you're safe and you kind of know the environment. The next thing that I think is super important, and I actually love these, are books. So I've started purchasing a lot of my preservation books instead of getting them from the library or just looking up recipes online. So I've started to get a lot of those in hard copy. Also medicinal books. I have a lot of nursing books up at the house. Also books on just preparedness. All of those types of things where if there's a certain type of information that you need and you can't access the internet, something that you can have on your shelf so that you can go and open that up and look at that. Because there is nothing more frustrating when you're trying to do something and you can't get the information that you need. We've become so dependent on this. In fact, we've even become super dependent on the GPS systems in our cars and on our phones. I know that if I'm taking my kids over to Costco and Sam's Club, I know that if I take the highway back, I know exactly how to get here. I've been here multiple times. I've gone on that route, at least once a month since we've lived here. So I know that route. But if the highway's backed up or I need to avoid that and I have to go the back roads, I wouldn't even know how to get home. And Nate said the same thing. He said, if I can get on the highway, he said, I can pretty much find my way home. But if I can't access the highway or the roads that run, the access roads that run next to that, he said, I might have a hard time trying to figure out. It's so easy to get turned around, especially when you are in urban and city areas. So having maps, having duplicate copies where you can have those in your car, your spouse can have those in their car, and then maybe you have another hard copy at home, because that's something that you really want to have on hand, because nobody wants to be stranded in a car when there's unrest or you just don't know what's going on. And you certainly don't want to be bumper to bumper on the highway. You want to be able to take those surface streets. Also, a generator is a really good thing to have. If your power goes out, it's really great to be able to have a generator just to keep at least your freezers running. You can even get back feeding generators where you actually have an electrician come. They will put in a plug for you and you hook your generator up to that plug. It's sort of like an RV type plug, and it backfeeds your panel for you. Now, definitely have a licensed electrician do that, because you don't want to backfeed the electrical lines. That could get you into some big trouble, as well as a lot of damage could happen from that. But if you can backfeed the generator into the house, you can simply just go to your panel box and say, I want my kitchen fridge on, click that. I want my garage on for my freezers, click that. And then maybe I want one AC system on, so maybe the upstairs AC, let's click that. And so those are the systems that will run with that, or even like a well pump or something like that would be important to have running so that you could have water. So a generator's another one. Also fuel. So I think it's really important that you have fuel on hand for your vehicles, number one. Also for equipment, if you've got a tractor, if you've got a weed whacker, a lawnmower, fuel is just really, really important. And if you're worried about storing fuel for an extended period of time, they do have fuel stabilizers that you can put in that will increase the longevity of that fuel. So always make sure to have fuel on hand. Now, what happens if the cell phones go down? Cell phones might go down here in just a little bit, as well as my internet may go out, because if you can't tell, there are a lot of black clouds that are coming over me, and there's some lightning in the distance over there. So if you can't tell that, that's what's going on around me. But if those communications go out, how are you going to get in touch with people? How are you going to know what's going on? A hand cranked radio would be a great thing to have, so that you can get news reports or just hear, what the local information is. Also, a two-way radio or like a walkie-talkie. They have really long distance walkie-talkies. And then there's also ham radios. You do need some licensing for that, but those things are going to allow you to communicate in an emergency when the cell phones are down, so that you can at least have a little bit of contact with the outside world. Maybe just your neighbors down the street, maybe they know something that you don't. We've got some neighbors that might be privy to information that I have no idea about, and that could help us out. So make sure that you've got a plan, that they've got something, you've got something, so that you can communicate and talk if there was an emergency. And then the last two things are: know how to preserve food, know how to have those skills on hand, learn how to do things so that, let's say your electricity did go out and you don't have a generator, or you only have limited fuel for that generator. If you need to start pulling ground beef out of the fridge or the freezer, learn how to preserve that so it's shelf stable. You can do that with stew beef. You can do that with really any raw meat. You can can that up so that it can stay on your shelf for years, and you're not having to use the electricity in the freezer, or it's not just going bad in the freezer because the freezer isn't working at that time and you don't know when the electricity will come back on. That would also be really important in times of hurricane season, like we're in right now. A lot of times people in hurricane areas will be without power for extended periods of time. So that's really important. And then the last one is get to know your neighbors. They have skills that you don't have. You have skills that they don't have. And in a time of an emergency, you may just be out of one thing and maybe need some help, and you can just call them and say, hey, do you have this item? Yes, I do. Or hey, my daughter fell and she's got a really big gash. What do I do about it? You might have a nurse or a doctor. It's raining. We're gonna go up to the house really quick so we don't get caught in this. Okay, I made it up to the back patio. So it looks a lot brighter out there on the camera than it actually is. We kind of live in an area that sometimes the rain will go all the way around us, but never actually hit us. So that's what I thought was gonna happen. But no, it looks like we're gonna get a nice little shower here, but we can definitely use it. But anyways, guys, just make sure you're prepared. Make sure that you are less reliant on things. Make sure that you have those items that are gonna make your life easier in case you do get into an emergency or, bad weather or just really anything. You never know when something's going to happen. So anyways, guys, if you liked that video, please like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next one.